everyone, it's Michelle from Scrap Secrets and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is episode number 2 in the Stretch Your Supply series. We're going to be focusing on using patterned and scrap paper. I have a couple techniques, and the first one I want to show you is creating a background with scraps. This is probably the easiest of all of the techniques. Now, no matter how long you guys have been crafting, we all have scraps. I picked a bunch of shades of blue, and I took these scraps and cut them down to anywhere between 1/4 of an inch and an inch. Just varied the sizes. I also cut down a piece of copy paper to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm taking my ATG gun and running it down the whole entire thing so there's glue all over the back. I'd recommend if you use copy paper, you use something like ATG to stick these pieces down. I wouldn't recommend a wet glue for this. If you're using copy paper. If you're using regular cardstock, that's fine. What you want to do is make sure that the cardstock hangs over both sides, unlike what I just did there that I had to pick it up. So you want to make sure there's an overhang on both sides. Don't worry about there being a lot on one side and hardly anything on the other. Make sure there is something hanging over. Now I'm just going to pick random patterns of cardstock and place them down. It basically turned out I did a solid piece and then a pattern piece, and I didn't mean it to be like that. It's just the way that it worked out. So here's one of the really, really thick ones, the 1-inch one. Now, you can pick any colors. You can mix and match patterns and colors and things like that. If you're going to mix a lot of colors, what I would recommend you do is find a piece of pattern paper that has a bunch of colors in it and then use that as your guide. I've seen people mix patterns and lots of colors and things like that, and it can look good. But for me, I'm more of either I stick to one color family or I find one really, really busy pattern paper and then pick my papers off of that. So now that the entire piece is done, you want to make sure all your corners are tacked down really well. And then what you want to do is take some scissors and cut off all of the excess. I end up pretty much throwing the rest of this away. You probably could use it again if you wanted to do a second background. You could use a lot of those pieces. However, I was just creating this one, so I didn't want to put these scraps back into my bin because most of them are really tiny. Again, I find the long bladed scissors work really well for this technique because it cuts them pretty fast. So that was the background. And now we're going to go on to paper piecing. So there's 2 different ways that I show you. The first one is just taking a piece of pattern paper. So this is yellow with white dots on it. I'm going to take this cheese wheel from a Kindred Stamps stamp set. I'm going to ink it up and put it on there. Very, very simple 1-layer paper piecing. I will eventually stamp this down onto a card, a cardstock, a card front, and then use this as a paper piecing, which just means putting it onto, like stamping it down and then covering it with a patterned piece of paper. So I would cut that down, like so the background might be all white, and then I cut that out and put that on there. Here is where it's more complicated. We're going to do a multi-layered stamp set. So this is an MFT stamp set, and we're going to ink this up a couple times and stamp it onto some colored cardstock as well as some pattern cardstock. The first one we're going to do is this bright pink. And because this is a newer stamp, sometimes I have to stamp it twice, but I didn't have to stamp this one twice. And we're gonna go onto this gingham paper, and I absolutely love this pattern. I had a doll that I used to carry around all the time called Dolly Lolly, and she had this type of pattern on her, this white and pink gingham. I absolutely love it. Because this was super busy, I did decide to stamp it twice so that the black lines were super, super crisp. We're going to stamp it a 3rd time onto light cardstock. I'm going to do that again. And then after that, we are going to use the leftover ink to stamp it onto a scratch piece of that copy paper that I used for the first technique. Because what we're going to do is paper piece onto that. When you paper piece with multiple layers, you want to make sure that you have one image, and then you're just going to put it together kind of like a puzzle. So I'm going to show you guys. Here we go. You don't need to make this really, really dark unless there's a piece that you are not paper piecing. I didn't do her face but you guys will get the gist of the whole entire thing. So here's a very light image. You really just need it so that you can have a guide. I'm going to show you, I'm going to cut out a couple of the pieces. So this, we're going to start from the bottom. We're going to cut out her boots. So I want to leave the rest of the gingham because I'm not really sure what pieces from the gingham I'm going to use, but I am going to cut out the boots. I'm going to fussy cut around the image, just cutting out the boots, and then I'm going to take a black marker and go around the edges of them. I've found that if you go around the edges, it makes it look like you cut almost perfectly. However, be very careful on certain cardstocks. If you use like this, I believe the marker that I used was an alcohol marker. It was not Copics, but it was not, this one is, I believe it's an alcohol marker, and it did bleed a little bit into some of them. I actually had to pick a different pair of pants for her to wear because it looked like she had ink stains all over the sides of them. So just be really, really careful. You can use a regular black marker, you can use a magic marker, it doesn't really matter. As long as you stamp in black, you use a black marker. If you stamp in another color, use another color marker. You know, match whatever you do. Now I'm taking my Honeybee precision glue and putting dots of glue down and putting her boots on. So that's the start of the entire thing. Now you're gonna see I fussy cut all of the pieces, and you can see the pants off to the left. See how the black outline, oh, it was so bad. So even on these pink ones, it wasn't the greatest thing, but I wasn't gonna stamp another girl just to get the pants. I just kind of went with it. There's that little shirt piece there, and it's sticking to my nail. But this is what you do. You put it together like a puzzle. Now we're going to use the gingham for her coat. I'm going to make it match her boots. But we're also going to do a layer over top of it. We're going to do that hot pink with her scarf and then her gloves. We're going to put the hat down in light pink, and then we're gonna put the layers on. So really this is just kind of a layering paper piecing thing, and that is how you would create a paper pieced image. So that's the second technique that I wanted to show you to use your pattern paper. The next one is pattern paper and embossing folders. Now I found this works best with very light pattern paper. We're going to do two different things. We're going to use the same Doris button folder, and we're going to run it through the Cuttlebug, and you can see that the raised images are on the pattern side. However, we're going to use the other scrap of it to do the opposite. So we put the pattern paper facing up first. Now we're going to put the pattern paper facing down. I'm going to run it through my Cuttlebug, and through the magic of TV, you can see that it's debossed. These look great, but you can also take any type of ink and go over it and look at how it makes those images pop off of there. Just go over very lightly. I have a hard time with being, with lightly inking things. So I tried here a little bit more, but you can just see the images so much better once you've inked them. So that's another idea of how you can use your pattern paper. Very, very simple, very easy to do, but there is another technique. The next one is very simple too. This is die cutting words. So I have a Thursday word. I couldn't find all my words. I don't know where they went. But anyway, I found this Thursday on my board of die cuts or dies, and I cut it out from pattern paper, and I think it looks really, really good. I think it just gives it something else. So there you go. So that's how it came out. I just think that it gives it a little bit of something different. The next technique is creating card sets, and I love this one, especially with using Kindred stamps because they have a lot of multiple stamps that go together in the set. First thing that I did was I took this old Fiskars punch and I cut out 4 circles. We're going to stamp the 4 women from the stamp set onto the circles, color them, and then I'm going to show you how to use your pattern paper for this to make a card set. I'm going to take each of the women, do the same exact thing. The stamping, I really didn't get totally in screen, so I'm just kind of going to talk about this. I saw a couple other people that have made card sets in the past, and this is what gave me the idea. A lot of people will do very similar backgrounds. What I decided to do was use one piece of pattern paper, and I got 4 different backgrounds, or 4 backgrounds out of it. And it would be nice to give these as a card set to somebody because because the stamps all came from the same stamp set, it all goes with the same theme. So if you know someone who really loves this show, and this stamp set I believe is called Gal Pals, if you know somebody that loves that, you could give them a nice set of 4 and they all match because they have the same pattern paper. So I'll show you what I mean once we get to do the backs. I stamped all 4 of them, and then off screen I did color them with Copic markers. I did not use very thick cardstock, so they did bleed a little bit. I tried not to do much blending. I tried to do very, very basic Copic coloring with 1 to 2 colors. Sometimes I did for their hair, I did 3, but I should have used thicker paper. I was going to use colored pencil when I was doing this, or I thought I was going to use colored pencil, and it turns out that I decided tonight that I was going to do Copic markers. Go figure. So now that I have I believe I have all 4 of the image. Oh, I have one more image to stamp out. I'm using the MFT Extreme Black to stamp these, which was a good call because I ended up using Copic markers, and that's Copic friendly ink. Oh, I hope that you're enjoying this and that this is giving you some inspiration on what you can do with your pattern paper to use it all up. You could also do paper piecing with this. That would probably be really tough, but you could do it. There are all 4 characters, and I cut down a piece of 12 by 12 pattern paper. This kind of reminds me of the Miami in the 80s and the furniture that they had, this background. So that's why I used it. I took my Distress Oxide and Twisted Citron and went around the edges to just give it a little bit of distressing and some interest. I did the same thing with all 4 of the characters so that they all matched. Again, when you're doing a card set like this and you have the same pattern background, you want to try to make them match almost, you know, pretty much just have the only difference right here are the character that you have on there. So I'm going to take my ATG gun, put the tape on the back of it, and then glue it down to a card base that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I apologize for my nails. I picked them at work, picked some of the polish off at work today. Some of it kind of came off, and it was a little bit of a stressful day. So I filmed this the day after I filmed the other stuff, and I just haven't had a chance to do my nails yet, so I'll do them tomorrow. So I apologize for them. Now I'm using the Honeybee Precision Glue. I do like this glue, but I do have hand and wrist issues, and I'm finding that it is very, very hard to squeeze. The MFT glue was a lot easier to squeeze. This is so much cheaper by the ounce than the MFT, but I might have to stick with the MFT because I find the Honeybee one difficult to squeeze. So just I know that some people that watch my channel have some of the same issues that I have or something similar. I just wanted to let you know it is difficult. Like you'll see, I think at one point I had to really squeeze it out, or I think in the next technique. So there is the card set. That was one of the, that was probably my favorite technique. The next one is pattern paper and scene dies. And this was probably the most complicated one. I picked out 4 different pattern papers, and we're going to create kind of like an abstract scene. So what I'm doing is just showing you what I'm doing with each of the pattern papers, and then we're going to take them over to my Cuttlebug and cut them out. So it's like putting a puzzle together. The pieces go together really, really well. I probably should have moved this down a little bit. I thought that I had it spaced out right, but I guess I didn't. Now I'm using the Honeybee glue again to glue all of these pieces down. I do believe that if you cut it out of, say, black, there is an outline, and then it's kind of exactly like a beginner puzzle. But it was easy enough to put these pieces together. So there's the sand. This is now the water. So I just, again, went through my scrap bin and found pieces that I thought would kind of be abstract representative of each of the pieces from this die set. This is a Honeybee Stamps die set. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but if I remember, I will link all of that below in the more information section. I'll try to link all of the supplies that I used. So here's the little sky piece. And again, you can kind of make it whatever you want. If you want it to be more waves and more sea, go right ahead and make that another layer of waves. But I kind of decided that it was going to be a sky piece, and then here are the clouds, so I'm going to put them together and then put the other sky piece above it. So that was the paper piecing with the dies. It was very, very simple. The hardest part was actually cutting out all of the pieces of the pattern paper. But here you go. There's where I'm having a little bit of difficulty getting the glue out. If you turn it upside down, I don't think you'll keep it upside down, keep it stored upside down. I don't think you'll have as much of an issue, but for some reason I didn't, and I was having some trouble with the glue today. But I do like it, so it's a user issue. So I'm just gluing that last piece down, and then there is the scene. So I hope that these tips were helpful to you guys. Let me know which one you like below. Are there ones that you didn't know about? Are there ones that you think that I missed from pattern paper? I know that there's a million of them. So I'll show you a picture of all of the things that we created. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you again real soon in the next video.